How many times on YouTube or any other media for that matter have you heard someone say, I'm a professional and I can tell you without a doubt, this is the best tool for the job? Well, I'm here with some uncomfortable facts to prove them wrong. And I'm not talking about the pros are stupid or anything like that. And don't try to put words in my mouth, because if I want to say something, trust me, I'm going to say it. So let's talk about it. Now, there's a lot of reasons why, obvious reasons, I should say, why pros can be wrong about stuff like this. And again, I'm specifically talking about somebody saying, hey, I do this for a living, and this is the best tool for you to use out there. But let's knock out the obvious ones real quick. The first obvious reason is they have specialized needs in whatever niche or trade that they're in. They have some sort of specialized need that isn't what the general populace is going to have. Would be it other pros or DIYers or even like high-end prosumer folks. They may not be doing that one specific thing, so they can be wrong about that. Two, they're professionals, and a lot of professionals will say, it doesn't matter how much I spend because I get these tools make me money. Well, whereas the average DIYer, they can't use that justification. And the other thing is they often build long-term relationships with traveling salesmen, with sellers that you never will. And you can go to Home Depot or whatever as much as you want, and you're probably not going to get that free hat or the calendar on the wall, the stuff that these people have become accustomed to. And if that works for them, great. But that's it's not going to work for you. And some of these can be somewhat legitimate reasons, if outdated in a lot of cases. And I'll circle back around to those. But most pros, what they don't want to admit are the facts like, being a pro, really, you know what it means to be a pro? It means that someone out there is paying that person to do a job. It doesn't mean that they're an expert at the job. It just means they get paid for it. There's a lot of pros who end up getting fired because they weren't good at that job. There's a lot of pros who go out and go to try and do something like run a tool truck or something like that, and they fail at that. Again, just because you're getting paid for it for a while or even for a long time doesn't mean you're a subject matter expert on everything associated with that job. Sure, it might mean that you've done this job for some time, and there is probable cause, if you will, to believe that you have some knowledge about how to get the job done. In other words, you know how to get from point A to point B in an amount of time that someone's going to pay you to get it done. Now, will they pay you to do it twice? I don't know. But, there's a lot of variability in it. And what it doesn't mean at any stage or any way, shape, or form that there's some fairy that comes down and magically anoints you and grants you the insight into which tool is better than another tool for getting that job done. That sort of knowledge is only gained through controlled testing, and let's be clear, most professional spaces, they're not the equivalent of a scientific lab, all right? But their history and work with those tools have led pros to believe a lot of things that simply are not true. And we're going to cover these as the professional fallacies. Again, I'm not trying to hate on pros in general. We're going to talk more about that later. This is about stuff, though, that because it's the forest for the trees kind of syndrome. You're too close and you don't see the whole thing, all right? The first fallacy is the "it hasn't failed me yet" fallacy. This is the one where you see somebody go, I'm a professional, I've been doing this for 40 years, this is the tool I use, and it hasn't failed me yet. Well, the easy one to spot there, if you're looking, in a lot of cases, people want to hear an answer. They want to hear an easy answer. A lot of people don't like the fact that I qualify a lot of my statements and be like, well, if you're doing this or if you're doing that. They don't like that because they just want someone to tell them, just do this. They want it to be easy. And the reality is, as an adult, you have to learn the truth is seldom easy. But at the end of the day, this fallacy comes back to your sample size is one. And I often tell the story. My family owned a Ford Pinto back in the day. Never had a problem with it. Truly reliable car. Didn't burst into flames once. Just because it didn't fail for you doesn't mean that it won't fail for somebody else. Even the fact that even if it only fails, say 10% of the time, that's a significant amount of failure. You may have 90% of the people going, hey, this thing is great, but especially as a professional, 10% failure isn't really acceptable. Now, I'm exaggerating there for effect, But this is the case that you get people who are like, never failed for me once. Doesn't mean that that is a statistical number that you want to hang your hat on. Now, fallacy number 2 is and I get this one a lot. Well, it's the best selling thing for a reason. I get that all the time. Well, more people buy this, more pros believe in this, more. You know what? I'm gonna go back to the Pinto. 1974, the best selling car was. Come on, read your notes. Say it. Don't make me point at Pete again. The best selling car was a Ford Pinto. It was a terrible car, and yet it was the best selling car. Okay, it wasn't the most terrible car, but it had a significant flaw. And then we can argue issues or something, but it was clearly not the best, most reliable car you could buy. Clearly by how many of them are still on the road today. All right, fallacy number 3. Now this one, we're going to call it the cost bias fallacy. And it has two halves to this fallacy. Excuse me. If you see a lot of cuts in this video and stuff, we have really bad wildfires going on right now. I have my air filter going, but it's still affecting everybody. So anyway, the first budget is the budget fallacy, and this is going towards less expensive tools. Somebody either buys or they're given a cheap tool. This one is a lot of times either they're given a cheap tool and they're told, "Hey, try this out. I bet it's as good as that expensive tool you have." Well, first of all, that person's going to feel challenged, and they're going to not want to find out that the tool that costs 10 times less than the tool they bought, they don't want to see that thing win. So what are they going to do? They're going to put it up against the hardest thing they can think of, often harder than what the regular tools would be forced to endure. Like say they're going to put it on a bolt, they're going to take a ratchet, put it on a bolt that's something that normally they would probably use an impact wrench for. And then when it fails, they'll be like, "Well, you see, I told you it was cheap." And the reality is, if their daily work, they put that high-end tool on there, they're going to be like, "No, I'm not going to use this because I don't want to break my $200 tool." And then the other side to that one is the person who has some cheap tools along with some expensive tools. They'll treat the cheap tools worse, like the old redheaded stepchild, if you will, rather than their expensive tools. They've got a job that's kind of sketchy, and they're like, "No, I'm going to use the cheap tools for this." Or while they're using the cheap tools, they'll abuse them because they're like, "It's a cheap piece of you know what. Who cares?" Then it comes to the expensive tools, and they dust them off, they baby them. It comes to like you're ripping down some 3/4 inch sheet good. You got your cheap saw, you're just like, "Yeah, I want to get it done. I hate using you, blah, blah, you're cheap." But then they get their Festool track saw, and they're gently pushing it through the cut. I've seen people do it. I've seen it firsthand. This is a bias that a lot of people, they're not conscious of, but they're like, "I didn't pay a lot for it, so I'll treat it like junk." They're like, who's had a cheap car that they just abuse rather than their nice car? They take it, they get it washed all the time, they make sure the oil gets changed regularly, it gets vacuumed out. The cheap beater, I mean, I'm guilty of this. We have a cheap beater that we beat on because it was cheap. All right, it's still going. It probably outlasts all my other vehicles. It's certainly outlasting my wife's truck. You know what? I was even able to weaponize this, if you would, for myself. I'm trying to look around. I don't have my sunglasses here. But I used to buy cheap sunglasses because I would either lose them or break them. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay for expensive ones because I'll either lose them or break them. And then I saw a pair of really nice glasses. I wanted to buy them. They were fairly expensive. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy them. And you know what? And I didn't break them. And I didn't lose them. And since then, for the last 30 years, I've only bought expensive sunglasses. Why? Because I don't lose or break them. They last forever. Is it because they're better quality? No, they're probably made by the same company. But because of that perceived value, I treat them better. All right? They're like the favorite child versus the middle kid. All right, I kid. Eleanor, I'm kidding. It's my daughter. She's the middle kid, but she's also the princess in the family, so she gets away with a lot. Don't feel bad for her. All right. Anyway, you have to understand that if you have a bias, you need to learn to identify your bias and how it gets applied. Now, the complete opposite of this, of the cost, the value bias, is what I call the Gucci bias. And that's kind of what I was playing at there with the sunglasses there. So, but you'll hear a lot of people say this. I laugh because I see these arguments all the time. And I can see right through them, and it's so hard for me to understand why everyone else doesn't see that the emperor has no clothes. But these people believe it, all right? They're like, there's a reason it costs that much. Okay, true, it could be because it's a really difficult piece to manufacture, and it could like cost a whole bunch of money to do it in a special way that makes it that much better. But it's as likely, if not more likely, it's because of the marketing, that people have just fallen for the the hype, and the tool has become a status symbol. I see this a lot. I get comments all the time. I don't think a day goes by when I don't look at through my comments and see someone say, "I'd get laughed off the job site if I showed up with X," and it could be like a Harbor Freight tool or a Ryobi tool, or some generic tool, or if I roll into the my new job at the shop and I've got a Husky box rather than a Snap-on box, no one will take me seriously. That is the Gucci principle, front and center. It doesn't matter how good you are. I've told this story many times. I knew a guy who did tile work who was an artiste. He was brilliant. He was half drunk most of the time, usually high, only used these old, cheap hand tools, but he could lay tile that was like the Mona Lisa. All right? And as my grandfather used to say, what is it? It's a poor craftsman that blames his tools. And this kind of goes into it, though. These people are thinking, because I bought the better tool, now I'm seen as somebody who's important. Now I'm seen as somebody who's professional. And again, it's just a fallacy. I will say, though, some companies have been able to market this fairly effectively. Snap-on is a great one, but I'll tell you what, who does it better than anybody else has got to be Milwaukee. And I'm not saying Milwaukee tools are bad, all right? But the CEO from Milwaukee has repeatedly said, our tools are not designed for the DIYer. Our tools are made for the industry pro. The odd part is that he seems to go out of his way to get in front of journalists who are in the DIY space to say that. I think we all know why. You tell somebody it's not for them, what do they want more than anything else? They want the thing that they're not supposed to have. Of course. Anyway, you know what? In fact, another great aspect of this, if you don't want to believe that tools have become a Gucci level thing, this isn't anything new. Go and watch my video on the history of Craftsman tools. I did a whole thing on it. It's a wonderful history about a brand. And granted, they never actually made the tools themselves, but they controlled what tools were being made, how they were made, and they're made to a spec that they designed. And one of those, a lot of people don't realize, they were, if not the first, at least certainly one of the first tools to come out with a fully polished chrome line of hand tools designed for professionals. They even said, the guy who was the head of Craftsman Tools at the time said that they had done testing and found, and this was, oh gosh, it has to be like in the 30s or 40s, it's a long time ago. I could be wrong here, but it was before my time, and I'm not the spring chicken anymore. So anyway, they did some testing and they found that professional mechanics liked the look of the fully chromed tools because they thought it made them look more professional. It made them feel proud to look at these fully polished chrome tools. That there is not, they're not talking about how the quality of the tools. They're not talking about how well they work. They're not being pragmatic. They're talking about how it makes them feel, how it looks. There's not much that's more Gucci than that. And the biggest red flag you'll find from what I call a Gucci tool collector is when they say something, they go, as I say, they go full Paris Hilton and they say, you're just mad because you can't afford it. Okay, let me just tell you this. First of all, I've met Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton called me an and you, sir, are no Paris Hilton. Anyway, fallacy number 4. That's a true story. I'll tell you about it sometime. Fallacy number 4. Going back to what I said, I think the most glaring fallacy is I'm an expert because I use tools every day. And it seems like such a common sense kind of thing to be like, oh, well, he uses this every day. Clearly, he must know everything about it. But think about the things you use every day. You use a cell phone every day. Are you an expert in cell phones? You're like, well, he's not a professional. Okay. Highway patrolmen. Highway patrolmen drive that patrol car every single day. They put hundreds of thousands of miles, hours and hours in that vehicle. Clearly, they must know what the best vehicle to drive is, right? No, because they have one vehicle that works and they use that. Does every person in the Army, are they an expert on what rifle to carry? Does every doctor, are they an expert on the best lab coat to wear? Now, they may tell you, hey, I looked around and these are the ones I tried and this is what works for me. Great, that works for them in this one specific reason, in this category, at this time, in this area, in this niche, at the size they are, doing the functions they do. This is one of the things I had to learn along the way in my path to, basically enlightenment, if you would. And I'm going to tell you about that, towards the end of this video. I don't want to interrupt it here, but tools need to be tested in a controlled environment that removes bias. You need to collect data from multiple sources. You need to have your work tested by others. You should be testing other people's work. By doing that, you guys are cross-checking it. It's almost like there's like this entire method out there for testing things scientifically. They should have a name for it or something. Anyway, and the last fallacy, I think it's the last one, last fallacy, and this is the biggest one, is purchaser bias. It is a huge, huge fallacy. And it stems from the fact that somebody has been like, I'm going to invest my money. And remember, my money is my time, right? So I'm going to invest part of myself and I'm going to use every bit of intellect I have. And I'm going to buy this because I think this is the best. There's no one out there who's like, I really want to go out and buy the worst, right? So they're going to go and they're going to try and buy the best, especially a professional, right? So when they buy that, they are now personally and professionally integrated into that choice. If they have to admit that choice was wrong, that is really hard for most people, because that's admitting that, well, not only are they not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but they might have gotten suckered. They might have fell for the marketing, and no person wants to admit it. No professional wants to admit that, hey, I was wrong, because as a professional, that means that people shouldn't trust you, that people, at least that's the way people think about that. As somebody who's gone past that to the next level, you understand that mistakes can be made. You would then look at rectifying those mistakes. You don't claim ownership of mistakes. You move past it and you address the problem and you better yourself as you move along. Now, some people though will say, well, if you were sent a tool or a product or whatever, you are biased because they sent it to you for free. And that might be true with some people. But the reality is, again, once you get to a certain level, especially at this level with YouTube and whatnot, no, I don't have to do that, because even if I say a company's product is bad, they'll just say, well, what about this product? What about this product? What about this product? They always have other things they need to get in front of people. All right. And that is just becoming more so. It is people are moving away from traditional media. Print is almost dead. TV is dying. Everything's moving to the internet. YouTube is becoming a dominant force. And people like me out here reviewing products and talking about products carry more weight than ever. And it's only we're only at the beginning. I've been talking to a lot of people in this industry. You and I, you as the audience and me as the reviewer, we have the power versus the brands to tell them, no, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to make it cheaper. You're going to make it better and you're going to send it to me for free, because I don't care. I could buy it. It doesn't really matter for me. Now, because if I'm dishonest and you find out about it, well, then you're going to stop watching my channel. But people haven't stopped watching my channel. In fact, my channel continues to grow. Science has proven the fact that somebody who buys something is going to be far more biased against it than somebody who's given something free for review. Anyway, the point is that these people have made the decision to invest their own money, and they are then committed to that decision. And it upsets people when you tell them something that doesn't support that decision. Case in point, I just did a video on icon wrenches beating Snap-on in some tests. And a lot of those tests, I even said they were stupid tests. All right. I did comment though, that Torque Test channel, which is a fantastic channel, love their stuff, that they did a test where icon outperformed Snap-on. And I'm just laughing because of all the feedback I got from it. And then people will say, well, Torque Test Channel said Snap-on won. No, Torque Test Channel said that if you added up all their point system, that it had more points. They didn't say that it outperformed the Icon. The Icon outperformed the Snap-on, and it was clear. But, I said it wasn't by a lot. I said it was by a tiny little margin. I even then went on to say there's two other brands that make essentially the same wrench, and they all ended up in the same area. I even went further to say, hey, but forget these. There's three other wrenches that really did beat, like by a good margin, a significant margin, did beat the Snap-on. And you should take a look at those other three, including, and I said, this will quote, including my favorite Wright wrenches, which I think is still my favorite professional made in the USA tool. But fanboys didn't hear that. And go back and listen to any of the comments. If you've been on other channels or you've seen people in the comments, when they critiqued what I said, did they include any of that? No. They either glossed over it or they twisted what I said or they called me a Harbor Freight fanboy or a Harbor Freight shill when I'm sitting there saying the best tool is right. Why did they do that? Why does a grown man have to lie about what somebody else said in order to try and win a fight on the on the internet? Again, it's that purchaser bias. They have integrated who they are, personally and professionally, into that purchase. And now someone's pointing out the fact that maybe you shouldn't have done that. They don't like to hear it, okay? I even stated in that test between the icon that it wasn't definitive. I said, hey, look, it's a sample size of 1. I said, all this really does is show what league they're playing in. It doesn't show you specifically like, hey, every icon you test is going to be the same level, or every Snap-on you test is going to be the same level. I said, word for word, a test could come out next week where the results were flipped. And funny enough, Torque Test Channel, they built a whole new rig that's fully automated, so there's no human factor in it. And they tried all this new stuff, and they did a new test. And guess what? The Snap-on outperformed the Icon by that much. Again, it was just like I said, they were flipped. It was by a fraction of a margin. And again, the sample size was 1. And again, an insignificant margin. We need to be honest about this. You need to be brand agnostic and call it for what it is. I even said this was going to happen, and it did happen. But fanboys giving you credit for that? No. It is beyond the pale what these people will do to try and claim, and I'm saying this because a lot of them are professionals. They bought these tools believing that what the salesman told them. They swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, all right? And it hurts being told that, hey, a $600 tool outperformed a $100 tool by a fraction of a margin. And then the other test comes out, and this is what's hilarious. The other test comes out the next week and proves that the Snap-on won, again, by a fraction of a margin. And they're running around screaming to everyone, see, we were right, we were right, we were right. Your $600 tool now, which lost before, now beat the $100 tool by that much. And that's what you want to hang your hat on? That's what you're shouting about? It's like the Yankees beating the Tennessee Smokies by 1 run in extra innings because of fan interference. Yeah, it's a win, but it's not something you want to talk about in the locker room with the local media. John, tell us about your win today. No, you want to go home, you want to go to sleep, and you want to forget about that win, all right? Yet every tool truck, simp out there is going around like they just won the series with this. Look at what people are saying. Look at what they're doing. And then look at the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. That's not a victory. It's not a victory by any margin. All right? So the truth is, here's what happens. Pros find a way that works for them, and then they stick with it. Sure, they may try something different here, they may try something different there, but they rarely adjust for bias. They rarely control how it's used. They rarely do multiple testings. They just don't approach it in a scientific method. That's just the facts. And if you are pro and you say otherwise, I want to see it in a video. I want to see you doing this kind of product testing. I've seen pros who do it, and you know what they come away with 9 times out of 10? Not much of a difference. And I'm kind of picking on Snap-on here rather than like talking about Milwaukee versus all the other ones. And we could do that. But like, Harbor Freight, with their, was the Hercules line, they added in the brushless, they added the 5-year warranty. And now, and in performance testing, they've been either beating or at the same level as Milwaukee and DeWalt for a fraction of the price. But that fraction of the price isn't anywhere close to the hand tool kind of disparity. It's not a 6 or 10x disparity. So when compared, it isn't that kind of glaring, oh my gosh, what's going on here kind of thing. I can totally see why people would want to go with Milwaukee. They've got a bigger line of tools. The platform, the battery platform is interconnected, But funny enough, going back to the mechanics who say, well, I'm a pro, so I pay for the best. And then you look at their power tools and they're running DeWalt's or they're running Milwaukee's and they're not running the Snap-ons. In fact, Snap-on's getting run out of the tool bays. They're losing left and right when it comes to power tools. Why is that? Well, they're like, well, it's nearly the same performance for less money. Isn't that the conversation we're having now? Why are they so invested in this? Because of purchaser bias. All right? That's why we use a scientific method. That's why we do this sort of stuff. Myself, all right, I was a pro. A lot of people don't want to admit that. They try to lie about it. All right. I was a pro. I was in construction. I did, they call it low voltage electrical. We just called it running wires back in the day. But I ran Ethernet, Cat 5, Cat 6, fiber. I built Wi-Fi towers, laser transfer towers, whole server room infrastructures, all sorts of stuff like that. So I have, not just one, but 2 trades to draw from. And then I moved into management. And part of the reason was because I have an open mind. I'm not locked in. I want to always learn new stuff. And I got a crash course in Silicon Valley in regards to product testing, evaluations, scientific methods and models, and why they matter and why they're used. We use a very data-driven, algorithm, if you would. We did not allow personal bias to get in, and other people would call it out like, hey, do you think you're being biased because of this? Or it looks like you're being biased because of that. And you learned to sit in a room with a lot of smart people, and you have to let your ego go, and you have to defend it with the data itself. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be successful in that environment. And that's why they lead in that kind of technology space, because they're ruthless when it comes to the data. Now, there's an odd saying that I feel more people really need to take to heart that I did from a young age. And that is, if you're not smart, surround yourself with smart people. If you are smart, surround yourself with smart people who disagree with you. Constantly challenge yourself. Constantly work to seek out knowledge, find better ways to test knowledge. I've done so professionally for decades. Then 9 years ago, I started doing YouTube, and I took those skills. I took my skills from the trades. I took my skills from being a C-level executive in Silicon Valley, and I rolled that all up and applied it to helping people find best bang for the buck tools that work for them. I've gotten a lot of hate, probably more hate than all the other tool channels out there combined. And people look at it. People lie about my background. They lie and claim that I'm a paid shill. They lie about things that I say and try to put words in my mouth, even though it's on video. You can go look exactly what I said. Adult grown men lie about this thing. Why? And it's because they're trying to protect their bias. They're emotionally attached to it. They have not learned. They have not moved to that true next level of professionalism. There's a difference between being a pro and being professional. And a lot of people still don't understand that. And I hope a lot of people will learn. Maybe people will see this video and realize, hey, I've been too close to this matter. I need to pull back. Snap-on's not coming over to buy me breakfast, all right? DeWalt's not going to put my kids through school. I'm doing this work. I'm doing this stuff. These people work for me, and they need to earn that. Okay? And if I made a choice and it was a wrong choice, I need to be able to push back from that table and go, nope, not doing that again. Case in point, and just kind of prove this fact using one of the fallacies I just talked about, is the fallacy of success. I mean, if they're right, then why has my channel continued to grow? We're closing in on 300 subscribers. That's not the actions of somebody who is lying and shilling and all this stuff, because viewers at the end of the day, they go and they buy the tools that we talk about. And if it doesn't do what we say it's going to do, they're going to know that, and they're not going to continue watching. And yet we keep growing. And it's not because I've mastered the algorithm. I don't have, dozens of, viral videos because go buy this, this little thing, and it's going to change your world. And I don't do that. We try to stay away from that kind of stuff. Do we do some stuff that might challenge you? And yeah, because you know what, with a thumbnail, there's only so much you can get in there to get the hook, to get people to understand what's going on. But we don't go after the going viral kind of content. We moneyball it, as I like to say. Just get on base, provide good content that people will come back for. 80% of our viewership is recurring viewership. And it's not because I shill for brands. It's not because I stand up for the easy brands and be like, hey, buy so-and-so. When I worked in tech, there was a saying of nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. That, no one's, at a corporate level, no one's going to get fired for buying Snap-on because, well, it's Snap-on. Everyone knows. That phrase, everyone knows, is one of the first red flags that should warn you that maybe everyone doesn't know, or maybe everyone's falling for the same marketing that got everyone else. Anyway, we don't do this because it's easy. We do it because we feel it's what's right. All right. We've grown because we challenge people to ignore the marketing, to look at the facts. DenaTools has grown because we become the thinking man's tool channel. All right. We put value and performance ahead of brand loyalty. I often say that we're brand agnostic. We've been the loudest voice on YouTube telling people that things are changing over Harbor Freight, not because Harbor Freight was sending us tools, because when we started talking about Harbor Freight, no one was sending us anything. We were talking about it because they earned it. All right. We also didn't give them a free pass. When they stepped in it, we were one of the first ones out there to say, hey, by the way, watch out for this. I'm often telling people, hey, they have a lot of great tools. This one sucks. Don't buy that one. In fact, when we started, it was kind of flipped. It was most of the tools suck, but these are the diamonds in the rough. Now they've really upgraded, but we still tell people, hey, watch out for these because those are the ones in the minefield you want to avoid. And we do that with a lot of other brands as well. We've been very vocal regarding what we call the tool truck alternative movement. All right, we put the spotlight on brands like Tecton, Capri, GearWrench, Icon, Channellock, Knipex, Wera, Weha, and more, telling people there are less expensive and better brands out there. There's made in the US, there's made in Europe, there's made in Japan brands that you should be looking at. We've been talking about Vessel lately. I'm a big fan of Vessel tools. Do I wish they were made in the US? Yeah, but I'm not going to hate on a made in Japan or a made in Germany tool. Yes, I'm biased. I was born in Heidelberg. Okay, fully admit it. That's the other thing I do. All right, I try to say, hey, when some suspected or when I get too close to something like Craftsman, I try to keep myself at arm's distance when I talk about Craftsman because I grew up around Craftsman tools. I have a special place in my heart for the black and red. I love Craftsman tools. I have been probably more obnoxious than anyone else about calling out Fast Eddie over there and about how he ruined the brand and sold everything off. But it doesn't mean that I still don't want them to succeed. And I tried to be honest and put it out there like, hey, I'm talking about Craftsman, by the way, or hey, I'm talking about SK, another brand I grew up around that I have a special, connection with. And I try to be honest about it and tell people like, look, fair warning, this might be influencing me, okay? We've been instrumental in educating people and disproving long-held beliefs on this channel about all sorts of things. One of them that I'm most proud of is, and it seems ridiculous, combination wrenches. There was a widespread belief that you could only turn a combination wrench in one direction. And it's just flat out wrong. I did a video showing the physics on it. I talked to, I think it was 6 different engineers from different companies that designed these tools. The guys who designed the tools that are being made say that this is not true. And I still had people going, no, you're wrong. The guy who taught me how to use tools, he told me this, and I believe him more than the guy who makes the tool. I even showed the Navy's handbook talking about how the tool is designed to be made or designed to be used. And people still won't believe it. You need to learn to be able to identify bias in DIYers, in prosumers, in pros, in anybody who's telling you something. You should always be looking and going, not just what's their angle, because a lot of times people will it'll be a bias, but it'll be innocent. They will not know it's there. They won't think about it. Maybe they grew up around it. Maybe dad used it or something, and they've always liked it, and they don't think about, well, I should mention that or something. It never occurs to them. They didn't go through the kind of background that I did. And the other thing is, one of my top sources isn't me, and it isn't, the testing and stuff like this. It's you. This channel gets millions of views across all our different platforms each and every month. All right. And my email, I should back up. I read all the comments. I try to read all the comments, at least, and I respond to the ones I feel that need a response to. But my email is also in every single video that we put out there. I'm easy to get a hold of, and people do reach out to me, and they give me feedback going, hey, I bought so-and-so, and I just want to let you know. Or, hey, and I get a lot of these. I was with this Snap-on for years. Now they won't warranty my product. Now they don't come back to my shop. My parents gifted me a toolbox and it broke, and now Snap-on won't warranty it because I'm the second user. I get this one a lot recently, that Snap-on corporate is pushing back and not warranting stuff if they weren't the original buyer. And I say that because we get a lot of people like, I'm smart, I buy Snap-on from eBay. Well, unless you got a dealer who's going to warranty that eBay stuff for you, corporate ain't going to do it anymore. All right. And, we have everyone I get feedback from everyone here. We got the guy who's just getting started to the industry pro. And you know what else? I also reach out and network with a bunch of other channels. Torque Test channel is one. I'm not going to call it a bunch of them, but some of them, it's a lot of back channel communications. We talk about the experiences we have with different brands, the testing methods we use, the results that we're getting, the feedback we're getting, the trolls who are out there. And we laugh about you guys a lot. All right. In fact, I often get people who will reach out to me after a video like this going, brother, you killed it. You knocked it out of the park. I wish I could say it, but I don't want to get the heat that you do. And I do. We're fine. We're the lightning rod. I'm retired from the professional industry. I don't have any tool companies paying me to talk about stuff. Do we take sponsors? Yes, we do take sponsors. We take sponsors from companies that we consider to be like tool adjacent, dash cams, power stations, flashlights, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the core tools, when it comes to power tools, hand tools, stuff like that, we don't accept sponsorships. We don't do that. And there's a reason for that, because we want to keep that separated from it, so it's not, possibly influencing it, even though it might be in the back of our minds, all right? So we try to keep that removed. And because of that, we're a little bit more independent, I think, than a lot of other channels, a lot of other people. I'm 55 years old. I'm at this point, this is my working retirement, if you will. That's why it's funny. People are like, you just hate Snap-on because you can't afford it. Then they're like, you were a executive in Silicon Valley. That doesn't make you an expert on tools. So you just admitted I made a metric ton of cash as an executive in Silicon Valley, but I can't afford Snap-on tools. Oh, your math doesn't math, brother. Anyway, if you got any questions, I realize this is kind of rambling at this point, but I just wanted to address this because it's something you need to think about. Think about who you're listening to, who you're taking information from. And I'm not saying they're all dishonest. A lot of them are. But a lot of them also don't understand where bias comes from. They haven't had the professional background that I've had to identify bias, to separate the data, to look at it independently, and to judge it for what it is. And I hope that's what you find here. And that's why I think of, and we see so many retired pros. We see so many people who come from similar backgrounds as me who have that kind of intellectual level of looking at things and realize, hey, being brand agnostic is the way to go. Finding the best bang for the buck, the best thing that works for me versus the best thing that works for you. That's what's important. And we lay it all out there and then let you decide. Anyway, I hope that works for you. If you got any questions, put it down below in the comments. While you're down there, don't forget to chomp the old like button, smash that subscribe, ring the bell on the way out. You all take care, God bless, and as always, shine on.